An old guy already. And while I'm standing here, I have my family here in the back. And first of all, I want to thank all of you for welcoming me here. So, my son lives right down the road here, so that's not far. I know many of you, and I've actually been with Steve and Frida for a number of years. We've gone to the schools, and they are very active with people, veterans and so forth. Today, though, I'm going to do something a little different. They talk about schools. I think I've been in school all my life. I got over 30 schools. I went to every school they could probably give me. But first of all, I'm not in uniform today, which is the first time. I'm usually in uniform. But today, I want to tell you, this is purple. When I was in special ops in Europe, we had the Marines, we had the SEALs, the Special Forces, we wanted a common color. And whether it was ever put in writing or not, purple was. So I thought, well, I'll at least put this on Frida today. I'm wearing the beret for two reasons. I want to honor all those berets that are worn all around the world. The history of the beret, really quickly. The Green Beret was something you had to work at for years to win the Green Beret. Later on, the Army Chief of Staff came along and put the beret on everybody, which is okay. But winning things in the military are very important. It makes the military very strong. So those of us that won the beret over years, many years of training, well, to make a long story short, it took a lot to get to be a Green Beret, and all of you understand what I'm saying. All of the people who serve get embedded in them a very strong will. And that will is God. They may not be strong with God, but when they're there a while, God becomes a strong part of their life. Then the country becomes very strong to them, and of course the family. Now, one thing I want to share with you, when I was at Fort Jackson, in another lifetime, 18,000 soldiers were lined up on the parade field. We're in khaki uniforms in the sun of July. The ambulances are running around. But the point I'm trying to make, when we said something to the flag, as I looked down the ranks of all these men, we marched in review past the reviewing stand, sweat pouring down us. There was something embedded at that time that's never gone. It'll be with me till I die. Let's go beyond, and actually some of the things that were said here earlier cover some of the things that I want to touch on. But matters not. Today, we're looking at Memorial Day, and memorial is a term that comes from the word memory. God gave us a brain that's incredible. You can remember things when you're 5 or 6 years old. We have this memory bank, and sometimes we have to tap it a little bit, but that memory comes back. So memory is something that we go back to that's in the past. Everything suddenly becomes the past. We have, in our country, one of the most honored places, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Those perfect soldiers, and I knew some of them, do everything precisely in honor of the unknown soldiers. And we have memorials all over the world. As it was said earlier, in 1870, the Army instituted the legal holiday. I'm going to depart from all of this for a minute and talk about what the Creator did for all of us in this room. He did something for all of us. The first thing, and I got this from many schools, military, and so forth. Of course, we have a wonderful memory, and that's what we're talking about today. In that memory of ours, when we lose something precious, it does something to us. And we don't want to lose it, so we do something to offset that loss. Part of Memorial Day. In the teaching of management, and it's been studied over the years, the first thing that every human and every animal has is the will to survive, survival. You dodge the car coming. You dodge this. You do it automatically. You weren't taught that. It comes automatically as a gift of God. The second thing that happens that's a gift of God is nourishment. As soon as our bodies get hungry, we seek food. You know, the animals at night hunt all night long because they have to have food. We have this feeling. So that's the second thing that God gave, a feeling for need of nourishment. The third thing that God gave us is body comfort. As soon as you get overheated, we turn the air conditioner up. Or if it's cold, you put a coat on. It's automatic. It's automatic. Nobody had to teach it to you. It's automatic. It was a gift. And then you have personal security. That's coming down the chain of things that the human needs. Personal security. You want a place to be fairly secure where you're out of any danger. And then the next thing that comes in our lifespan is procreation. We want to leave another generation behind us. So we have this embedded, and it's in our young people. They want to get married, they want to have children, they want to pass on, procreation. But the last thing the Creator did for us, He didn't do for the animals. Self-esteem. Self-esteem. That's why I had to say all this to bring to self-esteem. Self-esteem is this thing that God gave us. And we're reaching out for a higher purpose. We reach out for a higher purpose in life. What is my life all about? What is the higher purpose? And because that higher purpose, we feel that we have to be in touch with our Creator somehow. Whether be an atheist or not, at some point in time, we have to reach out and get in touch. And so, for those that have passed before us, we put up monuments and we do memorials. But always go back to this memory and this creation. The animals of it, God created man and He gave him this self-esteem attribute that makes him unique and makes him want to carry on. And you go all over the world, and I've been to a lot of places, there are memorials everywhere of those that have been there before. I remember being in Tunis, the National Cemetery in Tunis, Tunisia, and the perfect white stones, perfect green grass, kept immaculate for us Americans who died over there. We went in Egypt, in Marglis, in the desert, cactus plants kept by Australians. Memorials to this self-esteem of reaching out. So life then becomes more meaning, and we share that meaning on days like today in memorial. And of course, part of this is to give honor, to recognize what's been done. There's monuments, if you go on the internet, there's monuments all over the world, and of course, the Marines have this one with the flag Steve's got. But having seen a lot of the monuments around the world, both our country and other countries, it is this thing in us humans that makes us unique in all that God created. Of course, Arlington Cemetery is our very important place because a lot of the heroes, a lot of the veterans are buried there. We have Barrancas right here in Pensacola. Right after the Civil War ended, there was a feeling we had to do something wrong. And I'm going to touch on that a while. How the magnitude of the Civil War. You know what's interesting? I talked to my grandkids. They don't know too about these conflicts and all the suffering. Let me tell you, folks. I know I got a lot of veterans out there. You know, when you go into service, they test you physically and mentally, and you go through a lot. And a veteran is a whole lot more than the person walking around with a uniform or doing the job. So when we talk about the Civil War, of course, as all of you know, very few the soldiers during the Civil War, mostly farmers who had muskets and everything, they knew how to fire their rifles real well, but they weren't trained militarily. So it was a very bloody war. But we have these memorials to preserve that which has gone before us. One of the great heroes, veterans of our country, the father of our country, George Washington, had a quote. And if I'm offending somebody by talking about God a lot, I'm sorry, but that's me. And I think most of us share.
Amen to that.
George Washington was a patriot, and he was the father of our country, and there's some books that try to twist his history. But George wrote the rules for soldiers about being decent around women and all kinds of things. And General Washington said, The general hopes and trusts that every officer and man will endeavor to live and act as a Christian soldier, defending the rights and liberties of his country. Now, I got to tell you, folks, I haven't met too many people in the military who weren't just that. Ronald Reagan, I'm going to read some of these quotes that are on this one. We cannot escape our destiny, nor shall we try to do so. The leadership of the free world, we're talking about America, is thrust upon us. 2 centuries ago in Philadelphia, when they wrote the Constitution. In the days following World War II, the strength of power of America stood between the world. And as you know history, when America got in World War II, things were looking bad for the Russians and everybody. And we got into the war, incredible the number of aircraft the United States produced. I was just reading the other day, 50,000 airmen died during that battle. And many of them are POWs unknown, and we put the POW. Many of them, we don't know what happened to them. They went down at sea. The bombers weren't that good back then. The American people have a genius for splendor and unselfish action. Read your history. We're the only country, after a war, we go back and help them build it back. We built Germany back, we built Japan back. We did all that. We're Americans. We're an unselfish, concerned country, and our veterans are at the point of that sword. America is a shining city on a hill, that's right. Another great thing in our history about veterans, when Lincoln went to Gettysburg to give the address, he was very worried. He had the speech writers. And when he gave the speech at Gettysburg, he went away, he felt, I failed as president. I'm going to touch on that very quickly, not the whole thing, because we'll be here all day, folks. 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. We believe that today, and we will all the veterans fight for that. In the last part of that, without reading the whole, when he dedicated at the ceremony there at Gettysburg, but in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hallow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggle to have consecrated it, far above the powers to add and subtract, the world will little note, nor long remember what we say here, but it will never forget what they did. 7,500 military dead were buried there, and 5,000 horses. America has a history of unbelievable willingness to keep freedom going in the world. Let me touch on what we're talking about today. We saw memorial. They got a lot, folks. We got a lot to remember. When the World Trade Center got hit, we know all about the deaths there. During the Revolution, where we separated from England and everybody was trying to take over America, land, French, Spanish, you name it. The Revolutionary War, we only had 2.5 million people in the United States. We had 25,000 casualties. The Civil War, which is the one that's incredible, which is going on right now in the Far East. 625 casualties during the Civil War. Our population then was 31 million. Incredible number of people dying. No telling about how many were injured. In World War I, we lost 116,000. In World War II, we lost 404,000. Korean War, 36,000. Vietnam, 58,000. And of course, the figures for Afghanistan, Iraq are very unclear. Right? These numbers I give you today on those last wars, of course, are going up every day. It was something like 6,000 something. And of course, there's a way that the government tries to do things that make it not look so bad, particularly who's in office. But we owe it to these people because they have this will for freedom, to keep America free, to keep their families, everything safe. Ronald Reagan has said, and I've mentioned it before, is the light of the world and looked upon mankind for freedom. When you think about what's going on in the world today, if you take a map and you look at Syria, Yemen, all these countries that the cancer is spread on them, and you take the map of World War II, when Hitler went into Poland, Czechoslovakia, all those countries, you see the same thing happening over again. And we Americans stood back in the beginning, and then when we got into war, we see the casualties it took to correct that terrible, violent act that took place. And well, I'm going to cut some things shorter because we've covered a lot. I'll talk to a lot of folks. Let me quote Reagan. Reagan, of course, is going down in history as one of our great presidents. Well, I got to say something more. When we were in Spain, and some of the communists over there were against. They had posters up of Ronald Reagan with bandoliers on it. So Reagan represented the power of America. He reflected the power, and people respected Americans because of our president. All over the world we went, they respected our president. So what he said here is, America is the light of the world and looked upon for mankind for hope and freedom. So eloquent, America is the shining city on the hill. They always referred, and that is a little bit biblical, the shining city on the hill. And one more word about that comes from Reagan. As history is written, a nation that fails to honor its dead heroes will lose it all. Now, how many people are we talking about? You know, we're honoring veterans. You know, it's only 1%. Only 1% of our citizens are in the service. 1%. Isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible? That we put the burden on 1% to save all of our freedoms. For the living, let us not forget our sacred duty here is to continue the unfinished work of the heroes that we honor today. That our government, by the people, for the people, will not perish and be protected for generation to generation. Our day is coming, folks. I know we're the senior group here, but somehow we've got to turn this movement around to back to our founding fathers what they wanted here. Let the future record these veterans, deceased veterans. They're gone, but they'll never be forgotten because God gave us this memory. It's been, we'll pass it on to our children. Our monuments will be there, and we will keep this going as long as we live. One last thing, then. I know we have some prayers and things coming up. At the end. One thing that I wanted to share with you, and I ran across it a while back on the internet. I don't know how many of you have been involved with military funerals, but I used to be in charge of having them brought during Vietnam. And when taps was played, even today, I can't hardly take it. But do you know where taps came from? Does anybody know where taps came from? I don't know if this is a true story or not. I don't know. I was going to get free to read it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Unless you want me to read it.
We'll give you a break.
Okay. I'll probably mess it up. Here's something every American should know. We in the United States have all heard the haunting song Taps. It's the song that gives us the lump in our throat and usually tears in our eyes. But do you know the story behind the song? Reportedly, it began in 1862 during the Civil War when Union Army Captain Robert Ely was with his men near Harrington Landing in Virginia. The Confederate Army was on the other side of a narrow strip of land. During the night, Captain Ely heard the moans of soldiers who lay severely wounded on the field. Not knowing if it was a Union or a Confederate soldier, the captain decided to risk his life and bring the stricken men back for medical attention. Crawling on his stomach through the gunfire, the captain reached the stricken soldier and began pulling him toward his encampment. When the captain finally reached his own lines, he discovered it was actually a Confederate soldier, but the soldier was dead. The captain lit a lantern and suddenly caught his breath and went numb with shock. In the dim light, he saw the face of the soldier. It was his own son. The boy had been studying music in the South when the war broke out. Without telling his father, the boy enlisted in the Confederate Army. The following morning, heartbroken, the father asked permission from his superiors to give his son a full military burial, despite his enemy status. He requested with only partial. His request was only partially granted. The captain had asked if he could have a group of Army band members play a funeral dirge for his son at the funeral. The request was turned down since the soldier was Confederate, but out of respect for the family, they did so and gave him only one musician. The captain chose a bugler. He asked the bugler to play a series of musical notes that he had found on a piece of paper in the pocket of his dead young son's uniform. The wish was granted. Are these the words to taps? Whoa, you know they had words. Okay. Day is done, gone the sun. From the lakes, from the hills, from the sky, all is well. Safely rest, God is night. Fading light dims the sight, and the sky gems, and the star gems the sky. Gleaming bright, from afar, drawing night, falls the night. Thanks and praise for our day. Near the sun, near the stars, near the skies we go. This we know, God is high. That's very interesting, Jim. We're going to play taps. Tell the bugler to go ahead and
Well, I hope the time spent here is somewhat rewarding. Certainly, there's not much we could say that would give total tribute to those who have done so much. And many of my colleagues are gone. God's given me a long life. I'm still here. But I want to thank Freedom. We feel like we've got our only weakness, I guess, is we haven't driven down some of this information to our young generation. And we need to be, if we can, do that as best we can. But certainly, today is a day that I'm glad the country honors. And I want to thank all of you for being here. I hope this has been somewhat beneficial. I want to thank you for allowing me to come.
Thank you.